think they had a Wurlitzer. And it was this sound that just like, rang out. And I said, this is for me, this is it. I found where I want to be. I thought it was a magical golden place. I was class of 1980.
Jim Kronzer has some pretty good memories of high school.
These books have not been cracked in many, many years.
When he was just 14, he left Virginia Beach and moved to Goochland County.
Oh, there I am.
That's where Jim attended St. John Vianney Prep Seminary, an all-male Catholic school high on a hill above the James River.
I think I was toying with the idea of priesthood.
But while thumbing through his old yearbooks, the difference between Jim's freshman photo and his sophomore self comes into focus.
Stuff has happened to this kid. So this is the kid who was abused.
On February 13th, the Catholic Diocese of Richmond published a list of names on its website. More than 40 members of the clergy accused of sexually abusing children. In each case, the bishop said the allegations were found to be credible and substantiated. Some of the names were familiar.
Now and forever. Amen.
In the early 2000s, CBS 6 covered a number of cases involving priests suspected of molesting kids.
He baptized my children. He's part of our family, and it's really sad what's happened.
One of the cases involved a Henrico priest named John Leonard. He ended up being charged and convicted of abusing 2 teenagers, crimes committed when Leonard was the headmaster at St. John Vianney in the late 1970s.
And it was a small community, and it was run by 4 priests.
And 3 of them were included on the list released by the diocese. In addition to Leonard, there was Father Stephen Randy Rule.
And who's that?
That's Julian B. Goodman.
The priest who had abused Jim Kronzer. Jim says the bond was almost immediate and grew so strong that Goodman even became a friend of the family.
He did vacation with us once.
The young priest and his student shared a love of music and the arts.
Even to this day, I'll hear, it's like, oh, I remember listening to that on his record player, in his office.
But it was there, behind closed doors, where the abuse took place.
It was touching. It was inappropriate touching. And it would be in his private quarters, usually watching TV. There was some kind of distraction, both of us sitting on the sofa. It became very clear to me that this was not right.
The abuse only stopped when St. John Vianney closed its doors in 1978 after Jim's sophomore year. Like many victimized by priests, he never went to the police. But he eventually spoke out. Next, what inspired Jim to privately contact the diocese nearly 20 years after he was abused, and what happened in the early 2000s that made him decide to go public with his story.
This was something that I didn't reveal to anybody until many years later when I was in my 30s.
Jim Kronzer first contacted the Richmond Diocese in the mid-1990s and told them that he had been molested by a priest when he was a young teenager.
They expressed remorse, they expressed sorrow for what happened to me. I asked them to help cover the costs of my therapy.
Jim also requested a face-to-face meeting with his abuser.
He was very sorry, is what he said to me. It was kind of hard to watch. He was a shell of a man that I knew.
Jim got the closure he needed and life went on until 2002 when he stumbled across an article that stated no priest currently serving in the Richmond Diocese had any confirmed incidents of sexual misconduct with children. Jim knew that had to be false. In fact, at that time, Julian Goodman was the pastor at a church in Charlottesville.
I contacted the Diocese of Richmond and I said, hey, we have a problem.
This time, Jim wanted the church to publicly admit what had happened to him. and he would help craft that confession.
It wasn't some side room deal. It was like, all right, now we're going to write a press release together.
The day before this was released, Bishop Walter Sullivan forced Goodman to resign.
I felt cared for by an institution that had, by an institution that held an individual that damaged me. They took responsibility.
It's not easy for Jim Kronzer to talk about his past and the innocence that was stolen from him. But in the wake of the list and the meetings about sex abuse that are taking place at the Vatican, he feels that it's necessary.
I believe that people like me give courage to others. This is an old problem.
Despite the horrible things that happened to him, Jim says his brief time at St. John Vianney helped shape the man he has become.
I discovered my line of work, which is theater. That was one of the beautiful things that came out of that, and it's still my profession to this day.
But his memories of those 2 years will always be equal parts joy and pain.
I'll never get back the kid that walked into that seminary optimistic and emboldened by something new in his life that was supposed to be really kind of amazing.
Aya Youssef is used to playing basketball in front of much larger crowds. She spent 4 years running up and down this court as a member of the Atlee High School varsity squad. Now Aya's heading to college on a scholarship, but it's an award she would gladly give up if there was a way to stop the clock and turn back time. In the early morning hours of January 1st, while many were still ringing in the birth of a new year, this family was just learning about the death of a loved one.
To know that at 12 o'clock, she was already in a body bag. Mm-hmm. And we're celebrating making it to a new year. That's what hurt me the most.
One of them, Michelle Rawlings. Police say Rawlings was killed in a murder-suicide on New Year's Eve.
Michelle Rawlings was shot and killed inside her Eastern Henrico apartment.
I answered the phone and I said hello, and all I could hear was, "He killed her, Keisha."
The gunman was her ex-boyfriend, who also killed himself.
The worst day ever. The worst day ever.
While the tragedy has affected the entire family, it's been particularly hard for Nicole Rawlings.
For me personally, she was my other half.
Michelle's identical twin.
My fight partner, my diary, my best friend. She was everything.
The two girls had spent almost their entire lives together, from sharing a room when they were young to living together while attending Norfolk State University. Both earned degrees in psychology, and both got jobs in foster care.
And she had the biggest heart.
The twins separated for the first time in 2016 when Michelle moved back to the Richmond area and Nicole stayed in Hampton Roads.
It was hard, but it actually did make our relationship grow. We still talk every day, FaceTime, phone calls, text throughout the day, talking at work, so we didn't skip a beat.
Michelle began pursuing a master's degree, but she had another aspiration as well.
Coming back home and being able to coach with our father, that was everything.
Michael Rawlings is the head coach of the Atlee girls basketball team. Last year, Michelle became a full-time assistant.
Part of me bringing her there was the inspiration that I saw she could bring to young ladies.
They were babies, and she got to experience, being a coach and being a big sister again to them, and it was good for her.
And it was good for the players.
I've had coaches come and go, but I really felt like I had a connection with her because she was always there for me.
As a team captain, Aya was one of the first told about Michelle's murder.
I was baffled, and I didn't start crying until I got in the car, and it finally hit me that I was like, I'm never going to see her again.
But the family vowed to keep her name alive.
The name of the foundation is the Michelle L. Rawlings Legacy Foundation.
They set up a nonprofit focused on mental health awareness with the goal of providing an outlet and resources for people in crisis.
If you don't know how to be strong mentally and emotionally, what are you going to do?
Funded by donations, half of the money goes towards advocacy work, while the rest goes into a scholarship. The Rawlings knew exactly who deserved the first one.
Miss Aya, you.
I heard about it on senior night when they actually gave it to me. It's pretty amazing, especially to be the first recipient. It was really an honor.
Aya says she can still hear Michelle's words of encouragement every day.
You got this. You're capable of doing this. You got this.
And her siblings say they often feel her spirit.
She's here, and the presence sometimes is so strong, and it breaks me down to my knees.
There are good days.
Everywhere that I go, if I see a sunflower, I think about her.
And bad days.
But you don't realize that I'm in half. I don't even know what it feels like to feel a regular heartbeat.
But Michelle Rawlings' legacy is in capable hands on and off the court. And the head coach couldn't be prouder of the ones who are drawing up the plays.
They've done all the work, and so I can just sit back and watch, and I'm really happy about that.
If we can do it, you can do it.
Yes.
If we can push through, you can push through. You just have to find that one thing that will just motivate you and keep you pushing.
On days like this, Bob Hodge says it's no surprise to him that Jesus was a woodworker.
Sometimes I make the comment that I work for a Jewish carpenter.
But at this work site, Hodge is a disciple of Peter.
Pete's the boss.
My definition of teamwork, and they all agree, is a lot of people doing what I say.
Pete Adler is a retired lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army who has found his calling, building wheelchair ramps for those in need.
This has become a passion.
It all started about 13 years ago when Adler's Rotary Club was approached by a group called Project Homes, a nonprofit that specializes in affordable housing and home repair. Adler and his club accepted the mission. And they've been hard at work ever since, building some 180 ramps in 7 different states, but mostly in Central Virginia.
There's a huge demand throughout the entire Richmond area. As aging population, people want to stay in their homes, and a ramp is just a life-changing opportunity for them.
Project Homes provides the building materials for a job like this. Then the Army logistics expert gets things moving.
My job is to put the volunteer team together and schedule a date and install the wheelchair ramp.
We'll be all right, but we got to rip that.
But while this is most definitely manual labor, Adler says it doesn't feel like work.
We're not doing it for us. We're doing it for our neighbors.
Like Emily Crouch.
They are doing an amazing job.
Who lives here in the Pine Ridge community in Prince George County. Tell me about the front porch.
It has been falling down since I have gotten here.
A particular concern because of her young children, but a problem that Crouch couldn't fix on her own.
Because I can't afford it. It's okay, they're happy tears, baby.
Happy because one day, someone with Project Homes took notice.
These lovely men have knocked on the door and asked if I would fill out a piece of paper to see if I qualify.
So she did.
And a few days later, they said I qualified and that I'd have a porch in no time.
They kept their promise, and Crouch could not be more grateful.
Because my kids will be safer.
Because the craftsmanship is of the highest quality.
When I walk away from a ramp that we finished, I look at it as kind of a thing of beauty.
Hodge credits his leader's attention to detail. But while Adler is the general at work sites like these, he and the other volunteers take their marching orders from a higher authority.
There's definitely a faith component to this that brings us all together.
It is a very good time. You'll never hear any cursing on this. If you hear anything, it'll be praise.
I have a saying, God gives us the weather we need. God gives us the resources that we need. I put out the call. I used to worry about whether people were going to show up. I don't worry anymore.
On any given day, Adler is joined by anywhere from a half dozen to 40 volunteers. But despite that loyal following, he says he's always happy to welcome new volunteers to this fellowship of the ramp. And he's not choosy.
I take anybody. I'll take even you.